and we're going to be talking about something that's really, really important for salespeople, sales leaders, especially today when the world is in so much turmoil and change, which is the difference between coaching and teaching in sales. Taylor, welcome for today. Where can people find you before we get started?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tim. Primarily on LinkedIn. That's where I'm mostly sharing my experiences and my thoughts on the sales profession. So I'd love to connect with anybody who's reaching out to me there.
Okay, and you are very active on LinkedIn, aren't you?
Pretty active, yeah. I try to pop in a few times a week.
Yeah. So, just give us a bit of your background, because you, from what I remember, is that you've kind of walked the boards in terms of sales. You know, you've made your way up from sales into sales leadership, into first line leadership, second line leadership. So, give us an overview of your background.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been around a lot of different capacities in sales, even, been on the recruiting side, which has its elements of sales. But primarily for me, I've been the mid-market side of sales. I was an AE for a few years in the ad tech space, and then manager for 2 more years. And then the last 5 years or so, running teams, including account management, account executives, SDRs, kind of owning all of the elements of the revenue cycle. And so I've learned a ton over those last 5 years, and excited to share some of those lessons.
And I think one of the things that I've seen, certainly in the last 5 years, is that so much has changed.
Yeah.
And with the advent of AI and that, we're having to become experts at so many things, aren't we?
Yeah, stuff's coming fast, and I've even noticed, over the last 5 years, just how traditional deal markers that we might look for, things that reps want out of their career as well. It's changing on both sides.
Yeah, I think that I'm seeing more people are saying, what I want purpose. I want to be in a situation where I'm enjoying myself and I like getting up and going to work. And the converse is that sales is hard work, and we face rejection probably on a daily basis, which probably isn't the same thing as finding your purpose. And that, so there's a disconnect, or there's a way as leaders that we need to make a connect.
Absolutely. And I've noticed that reps have demanded more from their sales careers and from their leaders over time, even just, in this last 10 years of kind of getting into sales leadership. One interesting example, SDRs used to almost primarily, career path into that AE role. And I've noticed more and more they're wanting to get into marketing and sales solutions and in different parts of the revenue teams, or not revenue at all, just because they want to explore what's out there. And the demands on the manager to help empower that career, help them build those skills has really risen in the last few years or so.
So one of the things that we talked about when we prepared this was the fact that you said that you saw that the frontline management role had changed. There was a need for growth, and one of the things that you were talking about was emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I think the frontline manager role is really, really difficult. It's become much more demanding, and it was already tough when all you needed to do was report up the right number, pop in on deals, here and there, and now the reps are demanding an experience, from their frontline managers to help them grow, to help them develop, to aid their careers, to challenge them. Especially the good reps. The good reps really want that from their managers, and we're not always equipped for those types of conversations. I think manager development and manager training is already an underserved area of the leadership team. But being able to work with a diverse group of individuals, let's say you've got 6 account executives on your team, you've got 6 different personalities who all have different motivations, who all respond to different things differently. You could talk about love languages, in the office, each person might respond to, verbal praise versus, money versus, accolades. Tuning into that and identifying how to help each of your reps does require a high degree of emotional intelligence. And that is such a ambiguous term for many folks. Okay, what does that actually mean? But working out how you can communicate really clearly with your team, set proper expectations, tap into those motivators, and be that kind of that emotional bulwark and that calming presence for the team. That you kind of got to be a chameleon, and sometimes you have to be the bad cop, sometimes you got to be the good cop, sometimes you have to be just a neutral party. Responding to all those situations is challenging, and it's much different than just the very sales focused nature of the role that really dominated how you were a successful frontline manager for a long time.
Yes, I think, quite often it was, people were chasing the CRM or a spreadsheet or whatever, and it's like, it's, how much and what quarter and how are you against your number? And it's not like that anymore, is it?
No, and I've noticed reps obviously still motivated by money, by commissions, by hitting that quota, that achievement still really drives a lot of sales reps. But maybe it's a smaller piece of the pie for more reps, and just getting that verbal praise from a manager, or an email from the CEO giving them kudos, or recognition in front of the company, or maybe they just want to develop their skills really strongly. Say, you know what, I want to be the best possible sales rep I can be. It's coming in a lot of different types of areas. And so, yes, that chasing down the spreadsheet, chasing down the CRM can help lead to that achievement. But did you help your rep grow along the way, or did you do the deal for them? And did you take the credit? There's a big difference between those two situations.
I know when I was in corporate, the leader of the SDR team, they actually had a KPI, which was that they had to get the SDR to be an AE in 18 months.
Oh, I love that.
And so they were measured on that element, because all the SDRs were in. So the SDRs were in Dublin, in Ireland. And if you don't know, basically every single SDR there is in kind of Europe is in Dublin. So there's a real massive, if you don't like the job here, you just walk across the road and go to the next company. So the competition really means that you're not only you giving the person the job and the purpose, but also you're giving them the path, and they know that they're going to move into that role in the future.
Yeah, that makes a ton. I've seen that manager rep relationship goes such a long way towards retention and engagement and job satisfaction. And maybe I can't compare that to 10, 20 years ago, but I've seen it play a huge role. And yeah, there are some, say, hey, I'm going to make 5 or 10K more here, and more power to them. If that's what they want to do, great, go do that. I have seen, though, where people wait a little longer and they say, you know what, I love working with this manager because they are empowering me in my career. We have a phenomenal relationship, that they're helping me get better and grow. And that be a really terrific tool. So like you said, like there's a lot of jobs, and especially for successful AEs, you're also going to have that optionality. What's keeping you at that role? Maybe it's not 5 or 10K extra, but a relationship with the manager could be that.
So one of the things that you said also is that often you talked here about empowerment, but also about how, as a leader, you can be a single point of failure. You've got to give your sales team, empower them to be able to go away and do stuff, and not have to keep running back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I had this inclination as a new manager. I thought, the value I'm going to add is I'm going to take problems off my reps' plates, right? They come to me and they've got something they need to do. They've got something they need to accomplish. Okay, I can do that for them. Great. I'm just going to do this, right? And maybe in that near term, you get a dopamine hit from, accomplishing something, and you think, oh, I helped the team. But they're going to come right back to you in that same situation next time. They didn't learn how to accomplish that themselves. And one of the big keys I hit on in my leadership journey, and something I really emphasize, especially with new managers, but really focused on with the whole leadership group, was how to avoid those moments. It's still going to be necessary sometimes, but how to avoid those moments where you just grab it and do it really quick, versus helping your team kind of sometimes struggle their way through and get to where they need to be. Seeing that light bulb go off for reps when they do figure out some of those tough situations and then climb the ladder to the next tough situation is really rewarding as a leader. And it's also, for those reps, it's really, use the word empowering. It empowers them to say, hey, you know what? I can tackle this next time. I have these skills. I know how to problem solve and get through this. And it's such an awesome level to reach between manager and rep.
Yeah, and I think it's just a wonderful thing, isn't it, to give people the power to know and the confidence to do that as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so cool to see. And I think, any manager has probably, felt this. And if you're not feeling this as a manager, maybe you're not doing, much in terms of the way of empowerment, or maybe it's not the right fit for you. But if you do, as a leader, really get excited and engage when you do see those moments, then you're in the right profession. You're doing the right thing. And those are the moments that really, I think, keep you going as a manager.
So, as a leader, when you're running one-to-ones with people, because let's get into the talk about the coaching and teaching. When you're running one-to-ones, what's an effective one-to-one look like for you?
Yeah, so there is still the numbers element, right? We're not going to get around that, right? And depending on your team, right? For an SMB team, you might have more emphasis on those inputs, what the activity looks like, those numbers. For a mid-market team, you're kind of in the middle. You're running down some deals, really diving deep on some of the bigger deals, but you're still paying attention to those numbers and those inputs. That's going to vary org to org, but I guess the best advice I'd give, and where I've seen success, is that as long as there's really clear alignment and buy-in from both sides and what those numbers are going to look like, then you both know going in. There's no surprises each week. It's like, hey, we were going to hit these numbers. We talked about it. What happened? So because I've seen where managers maybe think they've set clear expectations with the numbers, but that rep actually doesn't know, like, oh, you wanted me to do this, or maybe they don't know how to do it, or maybe the communications or the expectations weren't clearly set. So first, really aligning on that, because who wants to sit and dig into numbers the whole time? You're just kind of checking that box to start, right? I think a couple things is really where the magic happens in the one-on-one, because that's really valuable time. You're getting face time together, you're learning from each other, and trying to both, make more money, close more deals. There's an element of coaching, there's an element of deal review, and they have a lot of overlap, but the ability to dive in and say, okay, here we are with Acme Corp, they're at 50%. Talk me through this deal. Maybe you have different deal markers that you're looking at, depending on your industry, size of company, where they are in stage. Okay, what are you thinking about doing next? And I really think that in a one-on-one, there's a great opportunity for a manager to create space for the AE to explore a solution. And that's where we talk about coaching, right? And coaching for us, and have seen it defined as 4 questions for every answer, and teaching being the opposite, 4 answers for every question. But I think managers put a lot of pressure on themselves, especially early on in one-on-ones, to have the perfect answer every time immediately. You think, well, because there's imposter syndrome when you're jumping into that manager role, and you think, wow, this person may be questioning my competency because I'm a new manager and I haven't done this before. And you put your pressure on yourself to come up with a perfect answer, when really it can be about helping that AE find their own answer just by asking probing questions, just by creating space for them to think through. Okay, how were you thinking about approaching this? Okay, what challenges do you think you might encounter, going down that route? Okay, who else do we need to talk to? Just about, kind of guiding the questions, creating more space to have that conversation. And more often than not, you're both going to kind of help come to a realization and a path forward, but it's a mutual process. And so when we talk about coaching, we talk about a successful one-on-one, I think the one-on-one's all about creating that space so that, both parties can learn from each other and grow. And deal reviews is a great example of that, where you're kind of exploring a hypothetical together, and arriving at a solution, see how to move forward.
And I think as in my time as an individual contributor, I always look forward to those things, because you don't know all the answers, and quite often just talking through things, you go, oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
because you're just too close to it.
That's exactly it. You're really close to it. And if you're the AE and you're staring at this deal, it might not come to you, but sometimes you just need the answer somewhere in your head, because you've probably done something similar before. And when you talk through it, all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that seems really obvious.
So you talked about the coaching being 4 questions to 1 answer, and teaching being 1 question to 4 answers. Would you see that you're using, basically switching in between of those things during the review?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's still a place for teaching, right? There's obviously a big emphasis on coaching, helping reps kind of get to the right answers, empowering them. But there's some situations where coaching just doesn't work, right? And so, because coaching can be a slow process, and coaching requires a certain baseline of knowledge. If you're encountering a situation that the rep has never even been close to, or it's super urgent, you might just want to try teaching in those situations. And oh, by the way, some reps, if every time you come to them with a challenge, you only ask them questions, they're going to get a little frustrated because sometimes they just need a quick answer or they're looking for confirmation or knowledge from you. And so you'll start to feel out, when each situation is appropriate. But there's some cases where they're encountering maybe an RFP that's really far afield from what they've ever tried to accomplish before. Coaching is not really going to be effective because they don't have enough experience or adjacent experience to kind of get to that mental leap of where they need to go. So that's an area where you're going to be a little more hands-on. And so especially with new reps, teaching in some of these situations is going to be a better path because you need to show them how to do that first. And then if that same situation comes on later, you can start coaching on that. Or there's been situations where they're just really urgent client asks and they're of a certain magnitude where myself as a manager, I said, you know what, I'm just going to take this and do this. I want to avoid that as much as possible. I'm like, look, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you how I did it later, but we're just going to get this done for this client. And then we'll circle back and talk to it. So that takes time to feel out. Everyone should feel really clumsy at a manager level when you're first doing it. It's going to feel pretty awkward because it's just such a different workflow and it's such a different set of skills than when you were an individual contributor. So don't worry. You're not going to ask the perfect questions in coaching. You're not always going to know when to coach versus teach. It just comes with time. And the more you develop a relationship with those reps, it will come, I promise you, but it's going to feel really clumsy to start.
So one of the things that you said to me was about being a connector manager. And someone actually put a comment previously in the thing saying, oh, I'm really looking forward to knowing what that is.
Yeah, perfect. And I forget where I read this. It was some article, but I loved the concept of, so a connector manager is someone that when someone comes to you for a question, and maybe it's running great. Hey, I want to get better at discovery, or hey, I'm not sure what to do with this auto client. You say, oh, wow, hey, Jim is great at discovery, or hey, Jenny has a couple auto clients that she's done a really great job with.
Yep.
It's the ability, and it does a lot of things. It helps relieve pressure from you as a manager to have the perfect answer, the perfect question, because there's a lot of folks in the org who just know more about you than the individual pockets of things that are going on. It helps the rep grow their internal network and learn to say, oh, you know what? Okay, there are some AEs that run these auto clients that I should be talking to, and it helps bolster those internal experts. Jim and Jenny are now, they get some kudos and they're recognized for their contributions, and so it's just a great virtuous cycle. And again, as a manager who thought, got to have the perfect answer all the time. Well, there's people who actually know better and they can have a really great conversation together. And it's just a virtuous cycle for the whole org. So I love the concept. I try and employ it definitely where I can.
Because it means that you're able to kind of, you're delegating it out.
Yes.
The person hopefully will feel, will say, oh, well, thank you very much that that they're the experts, and they are the experts. And in a way that's freeing your time up. So, but it's about building that network in the first place, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the resistance early on for managers is that you don't want to be seen as giving up control or be seen as, I'm not competent enough, so I'm giving this up to somebody else. That came up in the article I read, and I hadn't experienced that before, but I can see that's an understandable, mental challenge to get over. But no, that's been a wonderful approach for us to take as a management group.
I've also written down when we talked about accountability buddy. Tell us about what an accountability buddy is.
Yeah. So, and that could be as an individual contributor, could be as a manager, but the way we've employed it as a manager group is developing as a coach, developing your emotional intelligence. These are very incremental journeys. You're not going to just tomorrow be an awesome coach and always default to coaching. It takes a lot of time to build that into a habit. And so I found that it's helpful as a frontline manager to have another frontline manager that you can kind of check in with each other on. Like, hey, I know you had that tough situation coming up with John. Do you feel like you were doing more coaching or teaching? And it creates a system of accountability for you and that manager to grow together, because manager development's really tough. It's again, it's not happening overnight. I used a manager journal actually, and like if I were working on coaching or working on different aspects of emotional intelligence, at the end of the workday, I'd kind of jot down my thoughts like, did I do a good job coaching here? Did I hop in and teach too quickly? To build that awareness, so the next time I was in the situation, and I could feel that awareness start to build.
That's really
and I've also used other managers as a sounding board in that journey. So don't go it alone would be my, it could be a journal, could be a partner, could be a friend, could be someone internally. But have someone who kind of act as a sounding board so you can check your own progress and make sure you are building towards the type of manager you want to be.
Taylor, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us. The 20 minutes goes really, really quickly.
It goes really
remind
quickly.
people where they can get hold of you.
Sorry, say that again.
Remind people where they can get hold of you.
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm there a lot. You want to sit down for coffee and chat more about the topic? I'm all ears.
Fantastic, Taylor. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience. It's been awesome.